Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a bit different to my regular programming, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I switched from digital photography to film photography. So I use and own a Canon AE-1 program, and I've been using it for around 12 months now, give or take. So I thought I'd share my thoughts a little bit, just in case you're thinking about getting into film photography yourself. Now, I'm not the world's best photographer or anything like that. It's just more of a hobby that I enjoy. So feel free to, as usual, use the timestamps to jump around the video in case you're interested in certain sections. So to give you a bit of background, during the lockdown of 2020 in my city, I was looking for new hobbies and things to keep me entertained during my regular scheduled walks, my exercise walks in my local area. And at the same time, I stumbled across Willem Verbeek's channel on YouTube. And if you've ever looked up anything to do with film photography, I'm sure you would have stumbled across his channel. He's got some really good work. I highly recommend having a look at his videos. And it really just inspired me to give film photography a try for myself. I've been into photography casually most of my life, and it's always been digital pretty much from when I started, which has been great. But one of my biggest frustrations with digital photography is I always end up with these massive folders full of duds because I take so many photos, because I can take virtually unlimited photos, and I only end up with a handful of half decent photos after sorting through all of the duds. And I did take a big step away from this when I bought a 50mm prime lens, so I couldn't zoom as much, which forced me to really be a lot more intentional about my photos and think about my framing and that sort of thing. But the thought of only having around 24 shots per film that I actually had to pay for was actually kind of appealing to me, because it meant that I would be forced to really slow down and think about the framing of my shots and what I was taking a photo of, rather than just being super trigger happy and taking photos of everything and anything. And honestly, this has been one of the most enjoyable parts of film photography for me, is the fact that it really forces me to slow down and be really intentional about what I'm taking a photo of. Makes me really think twice about, do I really want to take this shot, or do I want to save the film for a better shot? And it really forces me to try different angles, different positions, until I'm really happy with what I see in the viewfinder before I actually hit the shutter button. When I used to use my digital camera, it came with a zoom lens in the kit. And I got into the really bad habit of just standing in one position and then zooming in and out to be creative, to get different shots. It's so easy for me to just stand in one position and to move around and zoom in and out, and it makes me feel like I'm being creative, even though I'm really not. I'm really just getting the same shot, but just at different crop levels, which I could do in post anyway. And so, like I said, moving to using a prime lens was actually a big step in the right direction for me, because it forced me to actually move my physical position when I wanted to get a different shot. To get the same shots I was getting on my zoom lens, I'd have to actually physically move closer to my subject or physically move back away from my subject. And just being forced to move around like that made me think about, oh, maybe I could try shooting from the left side of the subject, or from a bit lower down, or I could get up higher, or I could shoot through something or from behind something. And so it really forced me to get used to moving my actual physical position around my subject, which, to be honest, I think makes the whole process of photography a lot more fun and interesting. I love it when I move into a particular position after trying a whole bunch of different angles, and it just looks really cool. And I'm like, oh, I just discovered something for the first time that no one's ever seen, and then I can take that photo, and it's so much more enjoyable than just sort of standing there and taking a whole bunch of photos of just whatever. And so adding a roll of film into the mix just makes it that much more intentional about the types of photos that I'm getting. On my film camera, I've got a 50mm prime lens as well. So when you've got a prime lens that you can't zoom, and you combine that with only 24 shots on your film, it really makes me slow down and be really conscious about the actual photo that I'm taking, which makes the whole process just that much more enjoyable and actually kind of relaxing, because it makes you really slow down. So another reason why I decided to move more into film photography is just the look and style of film itself. And maybe it's because I grew up in the 90s when film was still the normal way of taking photos, but there's something just kind of nostalgic and organic about the way a film looks to me. I love the film grain and how it's not super smooth like digital photos. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love technology and digital photography, but there's something just really nice about getting away from the digital side and doing something that feels a bit more hands-on and organic, that doesn't require too much digital interaction. And you can't edit film as easily as you can edit digital photos. And for me, there's something just really nice about the simplicity of seeing a film photo that hasn't really been touched up too much. And lastly, the other reason why I wanted to move more into film photography is just the whole sort of hands-on organic process. Now, I've already talked a bit about this in this video, but I just love the whole process. You have to actually go to a film shop to buy the physical rolls of film. Then you have to open up the back of your camera and load the film in. And then as you take photos, you're actually rolling the film through. And then when the film's done, you roll it all up, take the film out, and you have to actually take it back to a film development shop. So shout out to Film Never Die, which is where I get my film developed in Melbourne. And then finally, you'll get sent the digital copies of your photos that have been scanned in. And that's really the only digital element of the whole process. And again, I just find the whole process really enjoyable. It feels a lot more hands-on for me than just taking digital images and then loading it up on an SD card or straight onto your computer. There's a whole other side to developing film as well. You can develop your own film at home. The reason I haven't really tried it yet is because I've heard the chemicals can be a bit unsafe. But if you do it really safely, it looks like a lot of fun, and I would be actually kind of keen to give it a try potentially in the future. And so in that case, you really are involved in the entire photography process, and it's just a more interesting and kind of personal way of developing your images, as opposed to just loading up a bunch of digitals from an SD card. So that's why I decided to get a bit more into film photography. Like I said, if you're thinking about getting into film, I highly recommend it. It's really fun, it's quite relaxing, and it really makes you think more about your creative process. And I don't think you need to buy a camera as expensive as an AE-1 program. I think part of the reason why these are a bit more expensive is because they've got the program function, which is a bit more automatic, even though I usually use it on manual. And this one cost me about $400, but you can find cameras a lot cheaper than that. And I think that'd be a good place to start. I've also just pretty much been using the cheapest film I can get, which is Kodak Gold, and then I've started using a bit of Kodak 400 as well. So it's not fancy film, but I've been really happy with how it looks. So if you're just starting out, I'd recommend just starting out with cheap film, because otherwise it does get expensive, especially when you include the cost of developing the film. I really want to try out some other types of film, like the more expensive portrait, and there's other types of film as well, obviously, like black and white and different types of color film. But I'm still kind of getting used to film photography, so I'm happy to just stick with the cheap stuff for now. So let me know in the comments if you're looking to get into film photography, or if you're already into film photography, then leave a comment with your #1 tip for film newbies like myself. And be sure to check out my tech playlist for more tech related videos. Most of my other videos aren't quite as vintage tech as this kind of a thing. But other than that, I hope you have a brilliant day, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.